We knew that was a little ambitious. So again, we're really happy with where we ended up. Really thankful for everyone that participated. We had a lot of walkers. We had a lot of booths set up. A lot of people that did fundraising. So it was really a successful event overall. And then we've now started to transition to our winter event. So we're planning for our Dining in the Dark. So that is set to take place March 12th. And that's going to be at the Boathouse here in Columbus at Confluence Park. And for anyone on this call that's not familiar with Dining in the Dark, it's a really fun event. I think it's one of the most fun activities that we do. Opportunity, again, to network. We have a silent auction, and then we eat a meal blindfolded. So we get a little bit of an experience of what some of our community members experience. So it's really a fun time for everyone, though. And while it's coming up, March is going to be here before we know it. But it's not too late to volunteer to be on the committee, the planning committee. So if anybody is interested on being on that committee, you can reach out to me or to Linda Shellis. And that's really for this event or for our vision walk, which we'll start planning very shortly. So lastly, I just wanted to mention the best way to keep up to date on those events and speaker series events like these is to follow us on our social media accounts. So on Facebook, that's the Foundation Fighting Blindness Columbus chapter. And then on Instagram, it's Fighting Blindness _Columbus. And those are both really the best way. We keep that pretty updated with all the latest information. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Allie and we can get started.
Thank you so much. And I'll share my screen for my short part. So please bear with me while I switch over. Okay. So hopefully you guys don't see that top bar, but if not, I hope that will go away. But really what I want to share today is our track record. So the Foundation Fighting Blindness is the world's leading organization committed to finding treatments and cures for retinal diseases. As of this past month, 856 million has been raised since our inception in 1971 to support and advance research that will reverse and restore blindness, vision. And last year, the foundation received 82 grants. This includes over 90 investigators in 67 institutions, eye hospitals, and universities. So going off of that, the foundation has funded hundreds of prominent institutions throughout the world. This includes Wilmer Eye Institute, Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, Institut de la Vision in Paris, France, and Mooresfield Eye Hospital, University College London, and Shea Eye Institute, University of Pennsylvania. Sorry, I'm not used to it. Let's go. There we go. So going into our inherited retinal disease landscape, over 200,000 people in the US have a rare inherited retinal disease, which is also known, I'm sure you guys know, as IRDs. This number increases to over 4.5 million globally. 10 million people in the US are affected with age-related macular degeneration and 150 million globally. And lastly, 45 clinical trials are either underway or being prepared to launch for potential treatments. So it's a very, very good number. In terms of identifying inherited retinal diseases, 1 second, I need to make sure we admit that. person, that funding has been a driving force behind the progress towards cures, including the identification of, as I said, 270 genes linked to retinal disease and the launch of 45 clinical trials. And the breakdown includes retinitis pigmentosa, Stargardt disease, Leber congenitis, Liberal congenital amaurosis, LCA, Usher syndrome, and other retinal diseases. And this, one of the last slides that I'm about to share is, there's so much going on within the foundation. It's programs and initiatives. So the first one, going from left to right, is about our volunteer chapters. So we have chapters with every region. And if you'd like to get more involved, please reach out to me, but it's about raising funds, increasing public awareness, and just making sure people feel that there's some sort of inclusion in their environment. Next is the Clinical Consortium, which is 20 plus clinical centers of excellence with experience in IRDs and with standardized assessment protocols. The RD Fund, it was launched just a few years ago. It's the Retinal Disease Venture Philanthropy Fund, driving emerging therapies that are moving toward or in clinical trials. Then we have, this is a huge one, I believe, for all of you, and I hope you're all a part of this, and if not, please reach out to me. It's my Retina Tracker. It's a patient registry that's completely free, it's global, and it's just making sure that you can get tested on if just your DNA, just anything like that. And once again, it is free. Then I want to skip over to the next section for Vision Walk. We have over 35 events, and we've raised over 58 million since in the 2000s. So please consider doing that if you'd like to get more involved. We also have dinners, galas, and just DIY events. We also have Visions, which I forget the date, but it's June 18th, 17th. So if you are able and willing to go to that, please, I can send you, when I send the recording of this, I can send the registration link to that as well. But two of the last things I want to say is BioBonds, which is advocacy. So if you want to reach out to your local government, it's the long-term opportunities for advancements and new studies for biomedical research. Lastly, grants and awards. We support clinical studies and preclinical research applicable to a broad range of blinding eye diseases. And once again, I might be reading verbatim off this slide. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me. My email is asarwork@fightingblindness.org. The more general one and easier one is chapters@fightingblindness.org. So we want to make sure that if you want to get involved, which goes into this slide, that you get involved. So with any of those initiatives, which is what this slide currently shows, is just if you want to be involved with events, if you want to be involved with just philanthropy, if you want to be involved with legacy, just please reach out to us and we'll get you more involved. But I think for now, that's all I'll share, and we can move on to introducing our education speaker. So Rebecca.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rebecca Ashworth, and I am the revenue chair. I took that position on in September after being diagnosed with RP in 2017, or also known in my case as rod cone dystrophy. And I'm going to introduce the education speaker. Gregory Hopkins received his Doctor of Optometry degree from the Ohio State University College of Optometry in 2010. He practiced as a senior research associate and independent optometrist for 2 years before completing an advanced practice fellowship in low vision rehabilitation and master's in vision science in 2014 at OSUCO. Since that time, he has served most of the week as a clinical associate professor within the OSU Primary Vision Care and Low Vision Rehabilitation Services at OSUCO. Dr. Hopkins has spent Mondays as a staff optometrist managing the low vision care delivered in coordination with the doctors completing VA Columbus/Chillicothe residency training. On Wednesday mornings, Dr. Hopkins has operated as preceptor for fourth-year OSUCO externs caring for the students at the Ohio State School for the Blind clinical outreach site. In the afternoons on Wednesdays, Dr. Hopkins has been certified by the Ohio Department of Public Safety to fit bioptic telescope glasses for the Central Ohio Bioptic Driving Program. He achieved clinical diploma status in telescope glasses for the in the American Academy of Optometry's low vision section in 2018.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rebecca. So I will go ahead and share my screen because he has a PowerPoint that he'd like to share.
Hey, Allie, we're not hearing any audio. I'm not sure if anybody else is.
I'm so sorry, guys. Let me make sure you can hear this. Let's see. Can you all hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good, but you could not hear that presentation. That's unfortunate. Let's see. This is everyone's worst nightmare, am I right? Let's see. I'll try it again.
Yeah, I'm still not hearing anything.
You know what? I think I apologize, everyone. That's super embarrassing on my part. If you wouldn't mind, can we go to our next speaker? So Sarah, would you mind introducing Michelle?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, thank goodness.
Okay. Hi, I am Sarah Wells. I'm the vice president at the Columbus chapter. I got involved with the foundation. I have a 3-year-old who is diagnosed with Usher syndrome. And so that kind of led me to the foundation as kind of in need of services and the networking, and then decided I really wanted to get involved. So I am going to be introducing our resource speaker. Michelle Motil. Michelle obtained her Bachelor of Arts from Heidelberg University and is a licensed high school English teacher. Michelle is a motivational speaker who is available for public speaking, formal or informal. As the Outreach Center's current family liaison, she supports Ohio by providing information, connections, and resources. In particular, she works for families who have children with deafness or blindness and the professionals who serve them. Michelle has personal experience with deafness and blindness since she has 2 cochlear implants and is fully blind. She is passionate and enthusiastic about providing equity and access to all students.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Thank you for the introduction, Sarah. I too would like to utilize the screen share thingy, but let
Hopefully
me
it works out.
close. I'm actually pretty comfortable with Zoom. However, I would like to close my email windows really quickly because I just don't want you guys to see all my emails.
Understandable.
All right. Oops. Okay, if I did things correctly, you should be able to see the website, the Outreach Center for Deafness and Blindness. Yes? No?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can see that.
Cool. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm gonna share as a professional and just, as a person with experience with being blind and receiving treatment from the Retina group. When I was 18 months old, I started coming to the Retina group. I went and I saw Dr. Optometry. I had a lot of uveitis, and as far as I understand it, uveitis is just a fancy way of saying inflammation of the eyes. And that is more typically seen in older people. So for a very long time, I was just the youngest little child at the Retina group waiting rooms and stuff. I've had a lot of surgeries and medication and shots and procedures over the year, countless, numerous, an incredible amount. They're a wonderful, great group and team. I lost my story a little bit. I eventually got diagnosed for my uveitis. There is a difference between being diagnosed with a condition, so uveitis, and understanding what causes that condition. And that is something I think Foundation Fighting Blindness supports, is genetic counseling and identification so that treatment can be more specific and targeted. And it's pretty important for the education system as well, honestly, to have access to that kind of information. I am going to use the Outreach Center to kind of help guide our conversations and tell you what's out there throughout the state. We work at, well, the Outreach Center is housed at OCALI, and we're a state agency. So we import the entire state, and we just try to build Ohio's capacity to serve families and the professionals who work with children who are blind or visually impaired. Blind and visually impaired, by the way, is a spectrum, and I call it BVI for short because it can be a bit of a mouthful. Feel free to drop questions in the chat. I'm using a screen reader. Oh, I should mention, I grew up being able to see. My autoimmune disease, that's what I ended up having. Autoimmune disease got diagnosed as VKH when I was 9. My autoimmune disease flared up badly when puberty came about, which, yay, fun. And I lost my vision. And so now I'm totally blind. So I'm using a screen reader, assistive technology program to navigate this website.
Thank you so much for sharing, Michelle.
Yes, please do.
Sometimes that's not easy. We love to have you. So we'll make sure, does anyone have any questions for Michelle? We'll make sure to have any other, if anyone missed out on this conversation right now, we can have further questions at the end of this speaker series. But once again, thank you. And I'm sure you'll get questions later on, but if we don't mind moving on, Sarah, could you introduce our last, well, I shouldn't say last because I'll figure
Wait a
out.
minute. Am I done?
Yes, if you don't mind. If you want to keep speaking, please
Okay.
do.
If you would like to go on, that's fine.
No, I don't. Please go on. I didn't know if you wanted to keep speaking. Please do.
Yeah, I still have, and then, well, I still have the rest of my presentation to do. Did you interpret my pause as being done?
I did, but please keep going. We definitely
I
want
was
to hear from
trying-
you. I'm so sorry.
I was trying to explain that my screen reader is what I use to navigate, which means I need a minute. I'll unplug so you can hear.
No, we want to
I have to
hear from you for
listen
sure. You're not
to
done.
what my computer is telling me, and that's why there was a long pause. Tony, back up! That's my guy. I'm very sorry.
No, you're fine. I completely get it. No, you are all good. Please continue.
Okay, well, in that case, I am. Thanks. I'm gonna carry on. So, family engagement is really important to us. And I am in charge of all of our family engagement efforts. I guess, well, I'm the leader, I should say. So I'm going to show you a resource. This is the family engagement section of our website. So people who are blind and visually impaired, they can lead an independent, quality life. How they do things and how they go about their ways, it may be different, it might take longer, but that does not mean it's less effective or of lesser quality. So we try to address birth through age 21. We are an education organization, the Outreach Center. So there are supports and services for all age groups. And I will explain that the state of Ohio has 3 major big systems that families and professionals can take advantage of. And that is, there is the medical system, there is the education system, and there's the disability system. So those 3 systems kind of work together to support the whole state. So for birth through age 3, there is this Ohio program called Early Intervention. Some people might recognize it as Help Me Grow. And for those who are blind or visually impaired, they could be eligible for services, which I think are free. At least 55 hours worth of services are free. And a professional will work with the family to determine what kind of supports or services might be needed to make sure that this young developing child isn't missing out on any potentials to grow and develop. Some kids with blindness or visual impairment, they might have additional disabilities or impairments, and they simply just might benefit from some more direct specialized support. And that can be people, so an occupational therapist, an eye doctor, so on and so forth. It can utilize multiple people. So if families, well, anyone can call Ohio Early Intervention and say, I think my child might benefit from, I think my child needs some help and some support. So if you're a mom or a dad, you don't have to wait for a doctor. You can go ahead and call them yourself and make your own appointment and go, and they will see and tell you about any services that are available to you. And it's very important that this need is identified and addressed, because the human brain is doing a huge amount of growing and learning, birth to age 5. And we need that foundation for the rest of our entire lives. And so if a child who is blind or visually impaired just doesn't have the access to experiences or to get development, it's hard to build on a foundation that's a little shaky. So we want to make sure that it's strong if they need it. That is part of the developmental, can I say it correctly? Department of Developmental Disabilities. That is a statewide system that's on a local and kind of government level. Recreation and leisure is an extremely important part of anyone's life, and that includes people who are blind or visually impaired. I'm going to click on this one. So there are adaptive sports programs all throughout the state of Ohio. If I understand correctly, I've never been to one. I keep planning to, because they sound really fun, but then the pandemic happened. But they are out there, and so I encourage families and friends and anyone who thinks, I can't do sports, I can't go skiing, I can't go canoeing, I think again. So this next one is the primary resource that I'm going to use to carry on for the rest. I will try to move quickly, Sarah. I don't want to talk too long. So I'm just going to quick do the table of contents for this one.
Michelle, you are totally fine. Take as much time as you need.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So this guide was created to try to help build families' understanding of and connect important medical and educational information. We see sometimes that the education system and the medical system and just the community at large, we think there would be a a huge benefit of intersecting and sharing information. They all actually connect very well in order to kind of build an independent life. And also, so medical and health professionals, they are extremely busy doing the important work of, well, medicine and health. And so they don't always have the information about special education or about even early intervention or what's some assistive technology that's out there, that kind of stuff. But that's where people like the Outreach Center, other agencies come in. We can provide resources that doctors and the medical and health professionals can give to families to help them make their own decisions. We'd like to provide options because each family and each child has their own unique, individual, different needs. So okay, I'm just going to run through the table of contents. This is a very big resource guide. One moment. I'm going to look for, where's my table of content? I'm navigating here. Table. There we go. I was looking for my table of contents. It's a fancy pop out menu thingy. Okay. There is a MedEd booklet that you can download that's free just to print out. It has condensed and highlighted the key points and resources and things throughout Ohio. The online version now is a lot more extensive, has a lot more information. This, okay, so this is kind of a visual table that we have developed to kind of help explain how the systems throughout Ohio connect with one another and to help families understand like what's going on and how do they all connect. And we broke it down by age group, and we included popular terms and definition likely to be seen just throughout these three systems. And you know how we all like to use our acronyms. I'm sure that's confusing for families and other people. So that's a tool. Okay, and then the rest I'll just go on. So you get screened or you go to an eye doctor's appointment first. So we cover what that may entail. A screening can happen at a doctor's office or it can happen at school. It happens, well, it's a federal requirement that screenings have to happen at school. Some other resources is financial aid for eye care. Eye care can be expensive, particularly for low socioeconomic status families, and there are local and national resources out there. Next is just preparing for your doctor visit. I'll open that one. This resource is directed towards a family audience. However, that doesn't mean that other people can still benefit from this too, such as professionals. So it just covers in as simple language as possible what to expect. Should families share their child's medical conditions with the school system and the education system? Honestly, it would be pretty helpful if the if the education system and the medical system could communicate together so that all of the child's needs are being identified and collaboratively worked on. Trying to explain quickly. So going back, We talk more specifically about early intervention. It has its own little section. Professional team members, we're going to open up that one. So a family that involves, whoever's raising the child and the child themselves, who is one day going to turn to adult, they're going to have professional team members throughout their entire life. That includes the school system and, the medical system. And so we just highlight here some professionals that the family can choose as supports. Who they are, what do they do? So I've talked a lot about identifying needs. Identifying needs is really important because we can't figure out a plan unless we know, what's needed. And we don't know what's needed unless we do some assessments. So I've highlighted just some of the really big, important assessment for those who are blind or visually impaired. One is a critical low vision assessment. So if a person is without any functional vision, is pretty much fully blind like myself, this wouldn't really apply to you because this involves using optical devices, which actually Greg Hopkins helped me a lot with this section of this guide, and I suspect he'll talk to you more about optical devices. The devices he was talking about allowing blind and visually impaired people to drive, that is awesome. Another, I think, very important assessment is the functional vision assessment. This is particularly important for everyday life and outside of school and in the community, at home, but it's most likely to be done by someone at school. There are independent clinics like throughout the state that aren't necessarily attached to a school system where you can still get these kinds of assessments. How is your child currently accessing the world is what they're trying to figure out. And using that kind of information to, develop a plan of how we're going to teach this person to access and get around the world. And a medical exam report would be extremely helpful for that kind of assessment, but it's not a requirement or anything like that. And maybe the functional vision assessment results would be helpful to a medical or health or device provider. Learning media assessment is another school thing. If you can't see, how are you supposed to read? Literacy is extremely important. And so this kind of assessment helps to determine how is a person who's blind or visually impaired going to access print and literacy. And the assessment fund just never ends. There's more and more and more. Feel free to check out even more. We're almost done. We're getting there. So transition is a time of life, typically around age 14 into adulthood. We call that the transition years. And it's important that kids and families know what supports and services are out there throughout the entire state. Hi, Greg. He just joined a meeting. But yes, it's important for kids to know what is out there for when they are an adult and to be able to practice when they are younger and they have the family safety net and the school system safety net. It is a little more challenging to get supports and services so easily once you become an adult. So the transition years are important to identify, what are going to be the supports and services when my child is a grown-up? And just here are some sources that can help. Okay, moving on. All right. So these are about rights and laws. These are mostly federal disability laws, some Ohio specific as well. So for instance, where do you find a teacher of students with visual impairments? Well, there are educational service centers, 52 of them throughout the entire state. And that is where a lot of school systems look for teachers of students with visual impairments. We call them TBIs for short. However, if they don't know about educational service centers, then how are they going to be able to reach out and find them? So that's why sharing information is very important. Parents and the person with disabilities themselves, very important for them to know their laws and things as well. So I tried to find credible, accurate, and simple ones. Okay, assistive technology. So like, for instance, I am doing this speech on my laptop with my screen reader program called JAWS. That is an assistive technology. But assistive technology could also be just a magnification device, or it could literally be an adaptive grip on a pencil. Adaptive technology, or I should say assistive technology, can be high or low tech. And that section just highlights some that can be useful for people who are blind or visually impaired. And then there are success stories. You don't have to take my word about it. There are examples out there of people who are making it and doing great. Glossary terms and acronyms, because as I said, it's helpful for everyone to learn the same shared language. And I am wondering where literacy is. I'm very distressed. I need to make sure it's still there. Literacy. Oh, okay, it's there. Thank goodness. Okay, so as I talked about at a certain point, yeah, people who are blind and visually impaired, how are they going to read? Reading and literacy is access to engagement, education, recreation and leisure, independence. So here are some resources as to finding talking books, books that read out loud, Braille, large print. And oftentimes, they are very inexpensive or free for people who can get a professional to fill out the application and say, yes, this person is blind. So they get free stuff like Bookshare. I've used several of these myself. I like them. And parents, you don't have to know Braille to still read with your kid. There are these Braille books out there that they're just a plain ordinary book with print and pictures, and then over top of them is clear plastic Braille. So you can still see, and your child can still run his or her hands on the Braille dots. I think I'm gonna highlight one more section, and then I'm gonna start looking in the direction of closing. Closing up. So special education, it is such a huge, big thing that I would be amiss to not mention it. It has a lot of, sorry, I'm navigating again. I want to show you that it's such a big topic that we have even more topics in another pop-out menu. Okay. So as I hope you see that a bunch of other options have popped up as well. I don't want to make it overwhelming, so I have tried to break it into small pieces, but there's a lot of information that families could take advantage of.
We don't see anything right now.
Hmm.
Before we did,
Okay.
just so you know, we saw a bunch, but right now,
Okay.
if you want to scroll up, maybe there we go.
Hmm.
We see a lot now.
Okay. Well, that is my brief, quick overview of this guide. There's also a section here for feedback if something isn't working with the website, or you'd like to give some feedback. And if you have a specific question, you can always email me. I will find it. If I don't know the answer, I will find a resource that has it, or I will find someone who does, and I will do the research. So please feel free to do that. Before I go, I want to highlight opportunities for you guys, just two. We're going back to the main. This is just our main webpage. Sorry, navigating. Okay. I want to invite you guys to sign up for Yes We Can, Journey Towards Independence. It's an interactive, ongoing video series. And its purpose is to demonstrate how a person with deafness or blindness can live an independent quality life, starring me, hi, and my guide dog, Tani. And we are just trying to cover skills that are important for people with blindness and deafness to know that may not be explicit or directly like mentioned to them before. These are things that aren't really required in the state of Ohio, but they're important nonetheless. Because when a person cannot see, they aren't learning things just by watching, which that is how people with vision learn. 80% of learning happens just by informal watching it happen visually over and over and over again. Did your parents really step by step teach you how to make a sandwich? Probably not. You probably have seen them do it so many times. You always knew how to make a sandwich. So those kind of things. That was a very simple example, but there are things that need to be directly taught. And so we're trying to highlight topics and provide opportunity for live dialogue. So not just a recording, some bit recording, some bit not. I would love for students, kids, family members, medical professionals, anyone, come, please do.
I think this was a blessing in disguise that, so Dr. Greg Hopkins, we were unable to share his screen, because I can definitely share that with you all who RSVP'd and who attended. But we have a lot to talk about. And first of all, I always like to call myself out. So Michelle, first of all, I'm sorry I cut you off. And I also think that's an accessibility issue. Like,
You didn't know.
I should have known.
It's okay.
No, I feel like especially someone in my industry should have known that. So do you have any comments about, like, hey, just give it a couple seconds, or in terms of a virtual meeting, how can do you have any tips about what you do? I'd love to hear about it.
Cool. Actually, yeah, we have tons of resources about accessible virtual meetings, especially since this unprecedented times of virtual communications. Well, like I want to emphasize, everyone is different. It's good to set up, I would say, meeting procedures in advance. So when like for registration, on the registration page, maybe include, do you have any accessibility needs? Provide your registrants with an option to like tell you if they do need anything. Secondly, being like for inclusivity, it would be convenient if everyone could announce their name before speaking, because not everyone does know each other's name. So like for me, person blind and visually impaired, I don't know who's talking all the time. But it's also beneficial for other people too. Like, oh, I don't know, English as a second language learners, or you're just really not good with faces, and a reminder might be good. And then typically you can announce like, okay, I'm done. I would be happy to email some resources that, you know, you can peruse at your own leisure. It's sometimes easier for me to review like these things and then talk about them. I haven't looked at them in a while, but just being very, oh, what's the word? Try to anticipate in advance and just set up accessible, inclusive meeting protocols and at the beginning of each virtual meeting, maybe brainstorm a little checklist that you can like use to guide you at the beginning of every meeting. And it is easier to start with accessibility than mind, instead of trying to add it and attach it on later as like at the end. I hope that was somewhat helpful.
Definitely helpful. Thank you so much, Michelle. So, I mean, we always, while we plan these events, you know, we take in consideration, more than consideration, the accessibility, but from this call alone, I've learned so much, and I want to connect with you offline and just learn more. So just everything you've provided from this call is life-changing, not to me, but everyone who's going to, not on the call, but gonna listen to it. So thank you so much for joining us. And once again, I'm sorry that I was like, are you,
It's okay.
I didn't say, are you done? But I don't like awkward silences, but sometimes, you know what, you need it. So
It's all good. You are human. That's all. And so am I. But yeah, that's another great skill, that it's not just for people with disabilities, everyone. It's just self-advocacy. But I do believe in being kind and polite too.
there you go. Well,
I think I can be done now. Is Joanie still here?
she is. I'm so glad. So Sarah, would you mind introducing her so we can get going on our last speaker?
Thank you, Allie.
Of course. Thank you so much, Michelle.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Sarah.
Sarah Wells again. I'm going to be introducing Joanie Schell. Joanie Schell is a vocational rehabilitation counselor with the Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities Bureau of Services for the Visually Impaired, and is assigned as OOD's dedicated counselor for the Ohio State School of the Blind, where she serves students attending the school from all over the state. Joanie graduated from the Ohio State University, earning her BA and MA degrees in speech and hearing science. She is a licensed speech language pathologist and worked as an SLP in a variety of clinical and school settings for several years prior to entering the field of VR. Her professional work history also includes working as a job developer and retail store owner. Joanie and her husband, Rick, recently moved to Johnstown and are realizing their dream to live in the country after many years as city folk. They have 2 children, Fletcher and Riley, and plan to grow their family to include 2 dogs, some barn cats, and lots of chickens.
That is true. I want to make sure that, do I have my microphone on?
You do.
You hear it. Okay. So I shared my screen and did not realize I must have it on full screen view because I lost the rest of the meeting. So I was gonna try to see if I could have my cake and eat it too, like see you guys and see my screen too, but I don't know if that's a thing, is it? Let me see.
We can hear you and we can see the
Yep.
opportunities for Ohioans with disability overview.
Okay, well, I can see one or the other, so I'm gonna go to.
That's
So
how
I'm gonna
Zoom
go
works.
to- What's that?
I said, that is how Zoom works. You are never going
I
to be able to see whether your screen is shared or not.
Okay, no big
Yeah.
deal. Okay, so let's do this.
There you
Okay.
go.
Well, thank you for having me. You guys, I think, with the foundation, with your regular meetings and everything and all your advocacy, I know that you're familiar with my good friend Sharon Valade. And as you know, she's the one that suggested that I talk to you guys today. So here I am, and I hope I have some information that's of benefit to you. So is it possible to just hear a little bit about who? I don't need introductions from everybody, but just to know who the audience is in terms of like, so just kind of understanding about what, what kind of diversity and what kind of work situations and so forth that we have present.
I mean, I'd love to hear that. I don't know if they'd be, there's a lot of people who are discreet about
Yeah.
it, but please feel free to do so. If not, then we can go for it.
I guess
I'll
I'm
start.
just,
Good.
yeah, I
Jen.
should
I'm with-
curious.
I'm with Kevin, who spoke earlier. I'm Jen Walker. We volunteer for the FFB. I have retinitis pigmentosa and went through with Sharon through OOD, and she helped me get a different placement I was a classroom teacher, and she was able to help me get a teaching job that was more of a small group pullout as my vision kind of got a little worse. So she was very helpful, came to my school, has been just very helpful through everything. So that's how I'm connected with her.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Just anybody else, what your background is, whether you work in the field or if you're an individual with a disability or visual impairment, blindness. Allie, if you just kind of have a generalization of who the audience is, I think that'd probably be the most efficient way.
Yeah, so I think you're dealing with individuals who are either self-affected or have a loved one.
Got it.
And I
Okay.
think the best way to go about it is a loved one or just know someone who's affected
Okay, perfect.
with RP.
So as you all know, I work for Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, and our agency is called OOD. I wanted to just kind of give you an idea about really how the agency is broken apart in the different areas, departments that serve different needs to the community, because a lot of times people get, there's a lot of different acronyms and departments that are thrown around, and there's not, we all just know working at OOD that there's out in the community not a real clear understanding of, how it's all related. So I'll just give you that quick overview. So OOD is basically the main agency. That's the state agency that handles vocational rehabilitation. And then they also have a department that does disability determination. They work closely with Social Security in terms of like claims, people that are applying for Social Security, and they review medical records to be able to help with those determinations for who gets Social Security benefits. That department is called the DDD, and it's the Department of Disability Determination. But what I'm mostly going to be talking about today, what I am going to be talking about today is the two bureaus under OOD that handle vocational rehabilitation. And you guys probably already know VR is just basically, it's an entity. There are a lot of different agencies, whether they're state agencies or local agencies, private practices, and so forth, that offer those kinds of services with the focus being to work with individuals that have disabilities to help them get ready to go to work, gain the skills that they need to go to work, determine what's going to be a good job, what's going to be a good fit, what potentially they could be successful with, what they should not touch at all, that it's just limitations are going to be too substantial to maybe be able to be successful with that. So all of those kinds of services and that kind of focus is all wrapped up in what we call vocational rehabilitation. The one thing you should know is that a lot of people don't know is every state is required to have a VR agency, a state VR agency. So you guys might know that there are a lot of local agencies and different service providers that have their hand in this, and they might have specialties that serve the VR, I guess, industry or field as a whole. But every state is required to have a state agency that offers vocational services. So in Ohio, OOD is that VR agency. So what I think I was trying to figure out the best way to really, I think, tackle just enough so that you guys would get an idea of really what goes on with a VR referral. And so I just kind of decided that maybe I'd just walk you through a situation where when somebody comes and they apply, what happens after that? What are the steps? What's involved? How fast do things work? What, what's going to be recommended? How much input does an individual have, and how does that work? How much does it cost? Those are all things that I think that a lot of times our individuals that come and apply for services, they are encouraged by somebody, or there's a name drop kind of thing, like, oh, you should go maybe apply for OOD, or they can help you with employment, but they don't always really know what they're getting into, and they never will always know what they're getting into until they get the process started. They meet with the counselor and kind of get things going. But because I have an audience here that is willing to hear this process, I'll at least give you guys the information. And as you share about our agency with other people, I think that those are the things, people want to know what they're getting into. They do expect a bill, so, there's a lot of things that people don't know, and we will never ever know why people choose to not come to us. If they heard of us, or if they got a recommendation and they choose not to, and I meant to set my timer. Oh, well. But if they choose not to apply, we don't ever know why. So, but here's the process, just kind of in a nutshell. So if you guys have questions along the way, I'm not necessarily one to want to have to take them all at the end. Again, I can't see you, so you might have to talk. I can see my screen, or I can see you, and I'm going to go ahead and choose to see the PowerPoint. So you might have to just interrupt and speak up, and that's okay. Okay, so this is basically, these are the main steps. So somebody comes in and they apply. There's a process where we're required to, as counselors, review any of their medical information or any kind of documentation that they have available. They might have those records. We might need to request them. We might need to ask the person to request them or get them to us. But until we are able to, in writing with a doctor's signature or electronic signature these days, until we have documentation to substantiate what they're telling us is going on with them down to, I have this disability or I have this visual condition. We can't really do anything with the case. So that's very important. Once they're eligible and determined that they can receive services from us, we go about the process of putting those services together in a plan. And what we're working towards is what we call quote unquote successful closure. And in the eyes of the agency, a successful closure is somebody who has applied for services, benefited from services, and has indeed reached a goal of working in the community in a competitive setting where they're earning at least minimum wage, and they're working in an integrated setting where they're working with other workers that are doing the same work they're doing, and with or without a disability. So that's what closure, successful closure is all based on. Does anybody have any questions about that? Has anybody,
Hey, Joanie,
know
are
one
you trying to
person-
share your, PowerPoint? Because we're not
PowerPoint?
seeing the PowerPoint.
oh, you don't see the PowerPoint?
Not
Well,
now.
my goodness. Why am I doing this then? Wait a minute, I thought that was the sacrifice I was making so you guys could see the PowerPoint. Okay, hold on. Let me go back to share screen. What are
At
you
least you weren't
seeing?
doing
Just
something
my,
embarrassing. You know,
what? What
could have
did you
totally been
say?
like,
Well, thanks. That's the kind of thing. Who was that? Was that Sharon?
It's Sharon.
Oh, well, thank you. I've got somebody who's willing to tell me I have lettuce in my teeth. So, okay.
you do
Let me
not.
see if
What?
Let me see. You didn't know,
There you go.
you didn't know what I was trying to do. Okay, can you see anything? What do you see?
We can see it now.
Oh my goodness. Okay. All right, I'm gonna just leave it at this one. Yeah, and I don't know what these little things are on the side. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, what were you looking at before? Nothing?
You
Your beautiful face.
exactly.
Oh, it was me talking? It's not like we don't do these Zoom calls like every day. We live and breathe these. Now you'd think we'd all know this tech by now.
Joanie,
Yeah.
everyone's gonna question if I've been in the. I don't want to talk about it. So you're
What?
doing good.
What?
You're doing good. I'll just
okay.
say that.
Okay. All right, here we go. Well, we'll just, hey, try. Let's see what happens here. Okay. So that's the little arrow where I was talking about what the staggered services are and how we get to successful closure. Okay, so the application, I'm just going to kind of blow through this because I sent this to Allie, and Allie, you're going to distribute it if you haven't already. And most of this is not for me to just go through point by point, but so that you can refer to it later. And if you want to give anybody more information about how that happens. But obviously the first step is that individual has to come to us and tell us that they want some help. So there's an application process. They can do it online. However they want to, get that process started.
Oh.
We have to do an intake. And I don't know if they used to have to be face-to-face. I know we're doing a lot more over the phone, even if somebody doesn't have the tech to do a Zoom, or a Teams meeting or something like that. But we still want to make that initial contact and give that person our full attention to be able to gather everything that we need to know about what their issue is, what their situation is, why they need our help to be able to work. So, and there's a point there about just reviewing the records. So here's the eligibility criteria. And this is probably the most important part because we do have a requirement. You have to meet all of these. The individual has to have a documented physical, cognitive, or mental impairment. Sharon and I both work exclusively with, although we dabble a little bit with BVR if we need to cover cases, but we are assigned to primarily all BSVI cases, which is the bureau that deals with visually impairment or visual impairment and blindness. It's not always the primary disability. Somebody could have a bigger disability that is more the primary, but the visual component and the visual limitations, the low vision or the blind related functional limitations have to be substantial enough that they need that expertise of somebody that really targets that population. So the other agency, the other VR agency is BVR, which is, I didn't really tell you about, but there's that's part of all these names that I was explaining is just kind of confusing. But yeah, under VR, there's BSVI, Bureau of Services for the Visually Impaired, and then BVR. And BVR is Bureau of Vocational Rehabilitation. And those counselors deal with and take cases and manage cases for anybody that has any kind of disability that doesn't have that substantial visual limitation or diagnosis. So that we've got to prove the disability. If somebody comes in and sadly, you know, even if we think there's a disability or if we can see that there's a disability, it just depends whether or not we actually have to get the records to have it on paper. Now, some things are so obvious that we can, you know, we can document that we observed that that person has that condition and, you know, but most of the time we do have to have paperwork. The person's disability has to result in a substantial impediment to employment. So this is all wrapped around that whole thing that everybody, we all know about. If, you know, when we use the word handicap or handicapping or whatever, that just because you have a disability doesn't mean it's disabling, or what, you know, when we used to use handicap, it doesn't always mean that it's handicapping. And gosh, now that I haven't said that in so long, I don't know why that's so offensive, but that's what that comes down to, is somebody might have an absolute documented disability or a medical condition that is chronic, ongoing, but if it truly does not limit them in their ability to get work, keep work, prepare for work, perform employment, they may or may not meet that criteria. So usually if somebody comes in with a substantial disability, they're going to meet that. But there are plenty of times that we staff cases and we're like, wow, this is just bizarre. You know, he's, you know, there doesn't seem to be anything there. But, you know, we always want to give people the benefit of the doubt. We don't fish for extra information if they're not sharing with us that this is my struggle, but we also try to be reasonable in that, well, you know what, I'm thinking that, is this an issue for you? And, you know, we always tell people, don't embellish, be honest, but, you know, we don't want somebody to walk out the door and all of a sudden they get a letter, they're not eligible because they, you know, on the fly or in the moment just couldn't think of things they've struggled with. So that's what that process is about. The last two are the person has to be able to benefit in terms of an employment outcome. And that one's kind of weird, but what it means is if they were given help with VR services, can they benefit from them in that, is their disability or is their functional limitations, are they so substantial that, you know, VR is not going to really touch it, help move the needle in moving them in the direction of being able to be employable. It's kind of the thing if you think about like some accommodations. Somebody might have a disability and certain accommodations just aren't going to fix it. It's just not going to do it, but there might be another accommodation or another kind of adaptive tech, or, you know, something that, you know, you would explore and you would come to the point where you recommend that because that does solve the issue, or it does at least provide some relief from the limitations that they've got. So that's what that's all about. VR doesn't always help everybody, but, you know, we have to look at that. And then the other thing is, do they require us? Are we needed, or can they do this on their own? I mean, are there things that they absolutely need? If it's something their employer should be providing, has that been addressed? Have they gotten a no and they need us maybe to help with something? So we just kind of have those conversations. That's all part of the eligibility. Okay, does anybody have any questions about that? I figure every time I take a drink, I'll just say, does anybody have a question? Because then that gives me time to do that. So, okay. So, oh, go ahead. Was somebody going to say something?
No, I was just, I love how you're speaking freely. I think that's how we're going to get everyone to get involved. So.
Okay. So then this is just our IPE. Everybody's heard of IEP. That's what the school does. We have a requirement that when we start talking to somebody about how are we going to get there to how are we going to get you to successful employment? What's needed? There are a lot of conversations those counselors are going to have with people to try to figure out what's gonna do it for that person, and all those things, those conversations and everything is part of this process that we call a comprehensive assessment. I totally left that out because it doesn't even matter, because what we're trying to arrive at is really just that between the counselor and the individual, we've made decisions that as that team, between those two people or their significant others or whoever else has chimed in, that those things are likely that collective package and that plan that ends up on paper is a viable path, and they might actually get there. But that is part of also our ethical responsibility to that for an individual to continue to receive services and be able to work with us, that counselor has to approve it. They have to support it. We always tell everybody, you are the main part of the team. We want to hear what you want to do. We want you to be able to follow whatever path or achieve whatever you want to. We're going to have those conversations, but there's always this underlying thing that a counselor knows, that we have to be listening critically, not to look at what they can't do, but not to discount what they can't do, because we're using taxpayers' dollars to buy these services, and everything that we have to run and our director has to take before the governor and everything, they want to know how many people have reached a successful employment outcome. I mean, ultimately, the governor wants everybody working because they're going to be paying taxes. So we have to look at what the individual wants and have those conversations about, well, you know what, that could be achievable. What are the limitations? Is that job goal appropriate? Okay, you'd like to do this kind of job. Okay, let's talk really candidly. Is it too visual? I work at the School for the Blind, and I have conversations all the time with my students about, I don't want to crush a dream at all, but part of what we need to do is to be able to trust each other to say, because I'm going to say, yeah, I know your whole life, you may have had people in your world that has said, you can do anything you want to do. If you try hard enough, you can do anything. And I might say, you know, you can't be a pilot, you know, you can't be a truck driver and, certain things. So, it's all to keep people on track of, we're trying to help you come up with something that is potentially achievable with our services, with our accommodations, with technology. It doesn't mean you have to know how to do it or be able to do it right now, but are there other things and services and things and tech and stuff that we can throw in there that makes it achievable? So those are the things that we look at. Is the job goal appropriate? What services are going to help? Are they going to help with the big picture? And then also, are they cost effective? We have a lot of rules where we have to be fiscally responsible, and we look at all of that. Pretty much almost all our services are free to the individual. We do have a couple services that are based on, like, what do you call it? Like needs based, where it's like college and, a couple things where we have to gather more information. The counselor has to do a little bit more legwork to make sure that if an individual has financial means to contribute to that, then there is a requirement that they indeed do contribute. So those are things that are just, college is the big one, but they're few and far between. But that's something that the people need to know, because, that's what it comes down to. Anytime somebody talks to you about some way they can help you, they're in the back of their mind, they're thinking, well, how much is this going to cost me? So anyway, so I'm going to just blow through these, I think. These are just some examples of some of the services. All of this is individualized. We look at the person's situation and where they want to go, what they've done, what they've achieved already, what's been successful and what hasn't. Why isn't this kind of work working out for you? Well, okay, let's not keep beating that dead horse. Let's maybe look at a different thing. Or it could require training. It could require just going straight to a job search and looking for the right job this time. It could be learning interview skills, or going back a few steps and sitting down with a provider that's going to really, really analyze what they want to do, what they're interested in, what they can do, what they've tried, and that kind of stuff. That career exploration is very important. So, and then the case closure, the requirement is that the person is stable and doesn't really need us, and they're independent in that job for at least 90 days. It has to be that competitive integrated environment. With individuals that have substantial disabilities, sometimes receiving services from like the county board, and they've got a case manager, or they've got a payee, or they've got home health care or something. A lot of times, even though we work with everybody at every level of disability, ultimately, sometimes individuals will, we're always looking for community placement, but if it's not achievable based on everything we're trying to do in terms of readiness, skill training, and all that, if they just really can't reach it, then they're not going to be closed, quote unquote, successful under our standards. But we work with like DD, or we work with other agencies to try to say, well, this person really does want to work, but he's not ready for this. And we can't do readiness training, work adjustment, work hardening indefinitely. they have to be able to master that or get to a level of where they can be competitively employed after a reasonable amount of time. So if they need a lot of practice, maybe they should be volunteering or working in a more supported environment. We're going to have those, the counselor is going to facilitate those conversations with like DD staff and, whoever. And anytime a case is closed, successful or not successful, anybody can always reapply at a later time in life or next week if there's a need, if they need us. So there's my information. You can call me, you can call Sharon. I don't know if you have Sharon's information. Sharon's on the call. So, and then these are just brochures that I think that Allie's going to send your way. This is just a little blurb about different populations that we serve. So, like it, and depending on where somebody is in their career journey, path, whatever, those services are going to be different because their needs are going to be different. Somebody who's been working and they're 50 years old and they had a back injury and they've been in construction, that person is probably going to have a different approach than a high school kid that has never had even any volunteer experience, doesn't even know what it feels like to be, what it means that you can't take a 20-minute smoke break if your break is only 15 minutes, So those are different skills and different needs. So we serve the high school population. We have a whole program for college support, and we have a specialized counselors called college to career counselors that work at some of our main universities, usually our community colleges around the state and our state schools. So you might be with a regular adult counselor, and this is any kind of disability, or it could be visual impairment. If they tend to be BVR counselors that do the college to careers roles, but if an individual has kind of grown up through the transition program with a BSVI counselor and those needs are VI blind related, that we're not going to hand off that individual to a BVR counselor. 9 times out of 10, that that BSVI counselor will just keep the case and then collaborate if they need to. But all of our counselors know how to do all these services. It just, sometimes we have specialists. So this independent living older blind is the one kind of anomaly that BSVI has that BVR does not have, because our VR bureaus are all about employment. Our scope does not go any bigger than employment related. So this is kind of an anomaly. These are individuals that do not want to work. They need VI assistance to help them live independently, live on their own. And we have certain counselors that serve only that population. So, and this is just informational about our agency. And this one is very important because it's got the office locations on the back. So if you have anybody in any of these areas, the best way to start is to, take a look at these numbers and try to contact the right office, I suppose. That's
Hey,
pretty much
Joanie, can you
it.
turn on the PowerPoint again? I can't see the.
My goodness.
Yeah, I stopped it. So Joanne.
Oh, you did. Okay.
that was me.
What?
Yep.
Oh, you still see it? Okay.
No, not anymore.
Okay. Well, how long has it been off?
A minute or two. So if there's
All right.
one slide or so that you would like to see, we definitely want to. Oh, this
Okay.
is Dr. Hopkins.
Okay. Well,
if you guys still want
mine's
to
off. Yeah.
Yeah,
hear
this
my
is
talk,
Dr. Hopkins.
I think I can make it work. I didn't realize that there were technical difficulties earlier.
Well, that was
Karen,
my bad.
Thanks
Greg.
and Joanie and everyone. Yeah, thanks for
Well,
shuffling
just so you all
things
know,
around.
before Greg, Dr. Hopkins goes into his presentation, I want you all to know that I have either brochures or just any outlines on our other, like Michelle and Joanne. I have attachments that I can send with the recording of this meeting.
Okay.
I know that's super important, so I want you all to know that, and I'm so sorry about the technical difficulties of everything. I know that's kind of the way of the world, but it's something I haven't dealt with yet, so I do apologize. But thank you so much, Greg, for being on point.
Okay. Allie, did anybody have any quick questions or anything that beyond
For yeah, Joanne or for Michelle?
Joanie?
Joanie, sorry.
Okay. All right. Well, it was a pleasure.
So I guess I can fire away and we'll see if you guys can hear the audio.
We can. Thank goodness.
Thanks for joining me this evening to talk a little bit about magnifying glasses and the label of X-Power that is frequently included. I know that it's one of the top priorities for many of my patients to know what X-Power device would be appropriate for them. And I hope that after hearing this brief talk, maybe you'll see things a little bit more differently, and that'll help you determine the best way to match up your vision with a device that would be appropriate. There are dozens of shapes and sizes, ways that we can magnify things, and myriad companies and vendors, product lines. It just gets to be pretty complicated. And unfortunately, eye care in general has been complicated since the beginning. Even in the 1800s, some of the founding fathers of optometry, particularly Snellen, the designer of the Snellen eye chart with the big E at the top, lamented the fact that we seem to be trying to make our situation about as complicated as it can be, where on the other hand, in other areas of science, people have been working to develop more consistency. But as it turns out, this complexity can be boiled down into some reasonable first approximations that will allow us to make a good guess and get in the neighborhood of the correct low vision device. And now I will never say that this is something that we can boil down into a nutshell, but it certainly helps to know what you're looking for before you go searching. So we try to simplify things and see if our results are logical. That's essentially the scientific method. And who better to talk about what more famous scientist is there than Einstein? And he said to make everything as simple as possible, but not simpler. And I think I can do that for you. If I talk about how my mind works when I think of a magnifying glass, I'm trying to start with reading glasses, and then the patient's performance on the eye chart can be matched up to an appropriate pair of reading glasses. And the way that reading glasses work is they allow us to put things in focus at a distance that is appropriate for our vision. So for example, normal patient with regular vision 20/20, they'd be able to function pretty well with a +2 over-the-counter pair of reading glasses. And we'll see how we can take that and scale it for other patients. A 2100 patient would require a +10 pair of glasses if they were available at the drugstore. But I think, as some of you know, the availability of reading glasses goes up only to about 3 or 3.5 diopters, which sometimes people will call the 300s or the 3.00s. But you guys all know this, and we doctors know this as well. But for some reason, we start to interject the concept of X power. And I think that that doesn't really do us any favors. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. First, let me just break down how reading glasses work. The dioptric unit is not something that we're used to using as a measuring stick, unless you're in optics. And a 1 diopter lens is defined as the lens that puts things in focus from 1 meter away. And so it's just the fraction of a meter or yard after that. So a +2 lens then will be in focus at half a yard or half a meter, and a +3 lens will be in focus at about a foot. And what you see running along the side there is some example acuity measurements. Those are the acuities that I would recommend for a patient with that vision to use those glasses. So just as Einstein said, we're going to pair up your visual ability with a lens that puts things in focus for you. And the way to think about it is kind of like fishing. So I have a little fishing bobber picture down in the lower corner there. And that's meant to signify that, when we give someone a +3 pair of reading glasses, we are kind of roping them in with the shorter fishing string. So we can cast out the reading card material out from their nose to about a foot. If we were to try to go any further, we would find the image would get blurry if we were trying to hold it at half a yard or at a normal arm's distance of say 16 inches or 40 centimeters is ergonomic for a lot of people. Well, we would find that our bobber would not be able to reach out that far into the pond, so to speak. So stronger reading glasses means closer viewing distances, and that's how the dioptric ruler works. We can use a lens to determine how close an object is to a person. The closer the object is, the bigger it is, and the easier it is to see. So we write prescriptions for reading glasses, but we don't write them in X power like this. This is a kind of glasses prescription. It says for Charles X Xavier, 0.63X single vision near at 16 inches or 40 centimeters by Dr. Seymour Clearly. No doctor would ever prescribe reading power in this way, but for some reason our magnifiers get labeled in that way. The conversion for that would be 2.5 diopters is 0.63X, but that just really doesn't help very many people out. You may as well be using Cistercian numerals, which is an ancient script that was used by French monks in the monastery. It's just a cipher that allows people to explain an X value, which is equivalent to a dioptric value. So where are these X powers coming from? I'll explain more about that soon, but I just want to explain first how I know that a given lens will work for a certain patient's visual ability. This was defined early on by a man named Kestenbaum, and he worked in Snell and Acuity and would use that to predict the vision, the dioptric lens from the vision that the patient had on the eye chart. So we have complicated formulas that explain this whole thing and give an example of what a 2100 patient would do. I like to show it this way. So Alfred Kestenbaum pictured there, and then underneath is his picture is a Snellen chart, one of the original Snellen charts, and then a gentleman holding some reading glasses. And next to Alfred Kestenbaum, I have pictured Louise Sloan. She's the one who said, we need to do a little bit better job with these eye charts. Maybe we can convert them to metric. And so she said, I'm going to create a metric font that will be in focus from 1 meter away with a +1 lens will be your 20/20 visual acuity. So she rearranged everything and said, we should simplify it in this way, use a chart that was designed to be scalable and work at different distances, because the Snellen chart is very hard to convert when you start changing the 20-foot testing distance to anything closer. And by the way, the reason that we use 20 feet is because the lens power that would put the world in focus at 20 feet would be 0. And so anything closer than 20 feet, we can start to measure in diopters, whether it's an 1/8 of a diopter, a 1/4 of a diopter, a 1/2 diopter, or 1 diopter there at a meter. So Kestenbaum's rule, we use a lot of the time to predict how strong of a lens someone would need, but there's a problem with that, because if we just use Kestenbaum's rule, then we will give someone a lens that will allow them to read the same way that they felt when they read the bottom of the eye chart, which is a challenge for a lot of people. We don't like to start at the bottom of the eye chart, I know. And so most people, if you watch them, they'll begin reading the eye chart about at a size twice as big as what they're capable of actually making it down to. And this was picked up by eye chart designers. I have pictured next to Alfred Kestenbaum now, Ian Bailey and Jan Lovey-Kitchen. And the Bailey-Lovey eye chart is another chart designed with Sloan optotypes that can be scaled, and you can work in both the metric system and in imperial units. But Jan Lovey-Kitchen in particular, she's the one who figured out that people need some cushion. They don't want to be reading a book that feels like the yellow pages. They want to have things closer so that they can give what's, in her words, a functional reserve. So I guess this is kind of like, you know, exercising or giving yourself extra time if you want to be on time for your appointment. We do these things just you know, as backups and to give us a little bit of cushion so that we're not under stress. So it turns out then, if a 1 diopter lens works for a 20/20 patient to just barely see the chart, then a 2 diopter lens will make things really comfortable for them. So that's a happy coincidence, because there is a 2 in the 20/20 scale. What we have to do is factor that 2 out. And now if someone reads 20/20, then we give them the 200s or the +2 diopter lens. So a patient with 25 vision, 20/25 would need a 250 add. A patient with 20/50 vision would need a 5 diopter lens, 2100, a 10 diopter lens, 2200, 20 diopter lens. And you can see as patients' vision gets worse, they just need to get closer to things in order to regain that same level of comfort that a 20/20 patient would have if they were viewing things from a 2 diopter lens. So you have to add before you multiply. And it's much easier to think in terms of addition rather than X power, because X begs the question, times what? X does not have any units. It relies upon some observer viewing something before they can compare it to what it is now that is magnified. So what lens have we been comparing everything to when we prescribe an X power? Well, there was actually some debate about this in the beginning. A couple different lenses were proposed. A 250 lens is the most commonly ergonomic bifocal strength for it would be appropriate for a 20/25 patient. You know, a 3 diopter lens is appealing too, because that's the strongest kind of, it's 1 foot. And so some people thought that was convenient, but ultimately the 4 diopter lens is the lens that won. And there's nothing special about a 4 diopter lens. I searched up and down to try to figure it out. What's so special about the focal point of a 4 diopter lens at a 1/4 of a meter would be 25 centimeters. That's about the length of a piece of spaghetti. So that's about as relevant as a 4 diopter lens is to a patient who's interested in using a 10 diopter lens. It makes no difference, but we can label things so that 4 diopter lens is considered 1X. Now, there is a little bit of a problem with 1X lens, and a really astute patient would say to the doctor, well, if it's 1 times magnification, then shouldn't it just be an empty window pane? because when I look through this window, everything is 1 times the size. And what happens, doctor, if I give patient a 3 diopter lens? And certainly that's helpful. It brings things closer than a 2 diopter lens would, but it's less than a 4 diopter lens. So it's a 3/4 X magnifier. Would that make things smaller? Is it doing the opposite of its job? Instead of helping people to see better and magnify things and bring them closer, is it actually minifying and shrinking things if it's 3/4 X, 0.75? So manufacturers decided that, all right, well, we'll tell the patient to hold the card at 4 diopter viewing distance. They'll get 1X from that, and then we'll put the magnifying lens in focus, and they'll get 1X from that. So that'll be 1X plus 1, so it'll be 2X. So they're basically trying to say no more 3/4 X, 0.75X lens. We're going to call that a 1.75X lens, and maybe we can, one up it a little bit. Pat our pockets. So there's a conventional X power in there of using the power of the lens, which is the focal point, capital letter F divided by 4, or we can do the capital focal point in diopters divided by 4 and just add 1 to it. And we can change the rules whenever we like, in the middle of our product lines even. So some manufacturers will make a 2.5X, a 3X, and a 4X, but they'll change the rules in the middle of the game. You get the impression that the devices are increasing in stepwise proportional strength, but actually the jump between the 3 and the 4X is going from an 8 to a 16 diopter lens, twice as strong, radical difference in power change. To make matters worse, here's pictured underneath 2 magnifiers in a series of handheld magnifiers that are labeled using manufacturer power, but the 3rd magnifier in the series uses conventional X power, where they add 1 to try to boost their numbers. So I have a 3X, a 3.5X, and a 3X. But their powers are 8 diopters, 10 diopters, 12 diopters. So this shows then 2 3X lenses that don't equal each other in power, and one of them is stronger than the 3.5X lens. Very confusing, and I can see why it's caused all this trouble for everybody. If you look closely on this label, you will see the diopters. And next to that is a 250 millimeter. That's the manufacturer's recommendation for how far away you should position your face or your glasses from the surface of the magnifier. In fact, in this instance, it would not be advisable to do that, particularly if you were already wearing plus 250 or plus 4 reading glasses. Because if you did that, then the magnifier would be at the focal point of your plus 4 reading glasses and would have no ability to magnify, because the focal point of the light is a through and through nodal point. If you do the optical ray tracing, you're basically only able to see the surface of the glass and not actually the image that you want to be able to see through the device. So it actually negates the power of the magnifier altogether if you hold it exactly at the focal point of a plus 4 diopter pair of glasses. So there is some sense to giving recommendations for how far away someone should hold a Sherlock Holmes magnifier, but we'll get into that in a little bit when we talk about magnifiers that aren't actually putting the picture in focus. And I'll touch on that briefly because there's one situation where X power might actually be useful. So what we're getting stuck on is branding. Essentially, if you get used to looking for the Prego magnifying glass, then you might end up with mixed results. But if you truly understand that we're not using cookbook approaches to low vision, but it requires us to understand the fundamentals, the basic principles that underlie optics, you can work in the generic diopters. But this is not the only situation where things have been, I'll call them jargonized. I just recently found out, and I think there's a meme, people phrase it, I was today years old when I realized that the numbers for the hair clippers just meant the 1/8 of an inch of hair that will be left over after they trim it. So if you pick a 4/8, then you'll have 1/2 an inch of hair left when you pick the number 4. I just didn't know that, and I thought that was kind of crazy. And maybe this is the first time some of you are hearing that. Maybe it's old news to you. Another example is in whiskey, very similar to what we've been doing with these magnifying glasses all these years. The proofing system was a way to show sailors that the whiskey that they were being offered from the captain was not diluted. And so they would soak gunpowder in the whiskey. And if it caught fire, then that was proof that the alcohol had not been diluted. Well, the issue with that is that in the UK, they did this and they found out that 57.06% alcohol by volume at about 60 degrees Fahrenheit will catch on fire. But if the temperature is different, humidity or other little things can throw off that measurement. And so the Brits, if they label a proof for their whiskey, if you get some nice whiskey from Scotland, it'll probably use that value. In America, they tried to simplify it and say, well, we'll just call 50% alcohol by volume as 100 proof. And so then, all you have to do is, 80 proof will be 40% and so forth. I think that the French kind of had it correct from the beginning. I think they were the ones sort of pushing the metric system and the standardization of science. And they had the Gay Lussex or the GL you'll see, or sometimes called OML. You'll see it on wine bottles and things. There they actually follow the alcohol by volume scale. But if you can boil these things down or distill them down to percent alcohol by volume, then you can make fair comparisons between different bottles. So most people are using alcohol by volume. I think since the 1980s, they stopped using the proofing system, but it's still printed on some labels, I think more for fashion than for function. Boiling things down to alcohol by volume is like what we do in eye care. We boil things down to equivalent viewing power. And so with a simple example of 10 diopter reading glasses, then that is a lens that will put things in focus at 10 centimeters away, a normal size character, maybe it's letter E, that's from a newspaper, capital letter E. And you bring that up right into that 10 centimeter focal point. You can, once you know that, you can extrapolate out the angular size requirement for any other distance. So this is where X power becomes useful, because it's comparing the size of the image to the original object, not some standard lens. So here's an example where I have used a stand magnifier that I rest on the page, and I put the image inside the focal length of this strong magnifying lens. And that actually acts like an optical projector. It will project out the image 33 centimeters away, and it'll be 3 times larger than the original newspaper print. If I view that from 3 diopters away, 3 times 3 is about 9. So I'm getting the equivalent of a 10 diopter system again. Still, another example, I could make a 10 diopter apparent viewing size by wearing +2 reading glasses and looking at a desktop video magnifier or a computer screen and magnify the print to 2 times the normal size. 2 times 5 is 10, the same way that 5 times 2 is also 10. So someone could wear +5 reading glasses and view size 2 font, and then it would be equivalent. So this is an example of the same patient on a video camera magnifier, like I said. And here you can see that if they needed a 10 diopter power lens, then a 5 diopter lens would work. If they are looking at 2.5 times print, but then you would need a 2 diopter lens only to view 5 times print. So how do we choose magnifying glasses from this information? Well, the manufacturers have more or less figured out that if they make magnifying glasses that don't line up with the eye chart, then it's difficult for doctors to prescribe them. So what we do is we just line them right up with the eye chart, and we see that there's a +2 for a 20/20 patient, up through a +3 for a 20/30 patient, and on up to, we can go as high as +50 if we like. And the 20 diopter lens is kind of a good sort of touchstone lens, because eye doctors will examine patients' eyes with that. And we always call it the 20 diopter lens. We don't call it the 5X lens. There are some reading glasses on the market, though, that are called microscopic reading glasses, because a single lens by itself is called a simple microscope. And they'll label it as a 5x microscopic, even though it's just a twin diopter lens. We'll come back to that twin diopter lens in a moment. When we use handheld magnifiers, our goal, if you were to put that handheld magnifier right in the spectacle plane where your glasses would sit and use it like a monocle, then you would have identical performance to the reading glasses. But the advantage of a handheld magnifier is that you can actually use it from any distance. So if you get that light and focus on a handheld magnifier, then you'll be able to view it from far away, because the light will be sent to your eye in a straight line so that it can interface with your distance glasses and then will be in focus on your retina. Unfortunately, the magnifying glasses are more frequently labeled using I call it that Super Mario Brothers conventional magnification approach, where now that same 20 diopter lens is referred to as a 6x, even though when it's in a frame, a pair of glasses, it's a 5x. So I wouldn't be fooled by that if I were you. And I would pay attention to this, because we have an entire series of magnifying lenses, and once you get over a certain strength, the lenses, they get smaller. Many times patient asks the doctors, can I get a large lens that does a bunch of magnification? It just unfortunately would break the laws of optics. The lower powered magnifiers are the big ones. So if you find the biggest magnifier that you can, it'll probably be the weakest magnifier that you can. So you concentrate the optical strength, the lens becomes even smaller, and it gets to a point where if you were to hold it at arm's length like Sherlock Holmes, you would be taking just a slice out of a cone, almost like if you picture a cheerleader's megaphone, and you would be just taking that little section that's equal to the length of the focal distance of the magnifier would be your field of vision. So it's kind of a way to visualize it, if that makes any sense. And so more intuitive than that is just to say, if the lens is small and the focal length is short, you're going to want to put your eye right up against the keyhole in order to expand your field of vision. These magnifying
Still on mute. I'm sorry. I thought that was a good point to end. I wanted to make sure to respect everyone's time. Please note that given the technical difficulties of tonight, Greg Hopkins, his full presentation will be available for recording, as well as our full recording. So just thank you all so much for joining tonight. We really appreciate your time. The walkers, Joanie, I feel like I'm pronouncing your name wrong again, but Sharon, Greg, Sarah, Rebecca, thank you all so much. We really appreciate your time, and we hope to hear from you all soon. But does anyone have any questions before we all hang up?
I had to miss most of this because of a conflicting event and didn't come in until we were in the middle of the diopters and optics and all of that. And I missed an hour and a half. Will this be recorded?
It is recorded, yes. So even this question right now is recorded. So yeah, so just so you know, it's not only recorded, but if you have any questions, I'll make sure to provide contact information as well. But thank you so much for joining. All right. Well, once again, thank you all so much. And I'll be reaching out either tomorrow or Monday with the recording. Have a great weekend.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ellie.